First of all, if your goal is to help small businesses in Minnesota, this would cover, 25 kilowatts I think you have in here. This would include most pretty small businesses that don't have a lot of electric consumption and so on. But if you really want to help the businesses do it, what you ought to probably try and do is exempt them from the 10.7, or now I guess they reduce it to 8% rate increase that Xcel is using primarily to deal with upgrades on its nuclear power plants. You ought to try and exempt the Otter Tail folks for the big stone rider that's in the bill, so they can pass that on to their customers. Ought to exempt the businesses from having to pay that. That's, I think, a 15% rate increase for their customers. And the Clay-Boswell improvements for the coal pollution, that's $350 million. And the Big Stone plant that's there's a Spiritwood plant that GRE put in $480 million. That was padlocked gates the day they finished building the thing. That's a huge rate increase for their folks. If you want to protect businesses, exempt them from all the costs that are continuing to go up from coal and nuclear power, from the traditional energy sources, because those sources are going to continue to get more expensive. Whether you like it or not, they pollute a lot. Even if you don't factor in the environmental costs, you do have to meet the standards that are toughening up, that are increasing the costs. And if you're worried about 0.5% increase here, then maybe you ought to be a little more concerned about the 10-15% rate increases that they're facing otherwise, because that's where the costs are going. And we are actually, in this bill, promoting one of about 2 or 3 energy sources that's going down in cost. All the others are going up and continuing to go up in costs. And if you want to talk about, there are some exemptions in the bill, and I don't like exemptions to standards when we can limit it, but there are some differences here. One is scale. The businesses, the paper mills in this bill that are exempted under the definition of large generators are 20 megawatt consumers as opposed to 25 kilovolt. That's an 800 times as large of a facility. These are huge energy suppliers, and if you talk to the folks from the paper industry, they'll tell you that they spend more money on energy than they spend on all their employee costs. They spend more than they spend on all their resources for paper, the paper pulp. They spend a lot of money on this. They're internationally competitive businesses, and I don't mean to suggest that others are not. But in a case like this, you have one of our utilities up north that has something like 60% of its entire load is in these 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 large users. And again, I understand, I don't like putting exceptions in. That was a unique situation in terms of that. But the other point I want to make is that the bottom line is we are spending more money. If you want to protect your business customers, the fastest thing you could do to help them do that is get them off the track of the more costs that we're going to continue to face for coal and nuclear power, and we should convert to this as fast as we can. The final thing I'll say about this amendment is that basically we're saying we're going to have this very modest standard, the weakest one of any state that has a solar standard in the country, and we're going to exempt virtually everybody except for residential customers from it. So in other words, when you have a standard that has more holes than Swiss cheese, I'm not sure why you would want to pursue that and call it a standard, because it's not really a standard at that case. But fundamentally, this is not protecting the ratepayers, whether residential or in this case, the commercial, the business ratepayers. If you want to protect them, exempt them from all the costs of the nuclear and coal plants that are going up faster year by year. You're going to have 8-point-some% this year from Xcel. You're going to have another one again another year or two from now. Xcel's had, I think, 5 rate cases since 2006. rate increase since 2006. We're going to continue to have that. So if you want to protect them, vote against this amendment and vote to move us off of those fossil fuels that are getting more expensive.